Hello and welcome back to the MD Labs. This is Alex, and recently I've released the big Marketers Delight 4.7, and that update was all about rewiring Marketers Delight to more efficiently store and pull data from your database. So by doing all of that, it led me to eventually actually going into my own website's databases and looking around to see, just to get a little better idea of how things worked. And in there, I found just a ton of stuff that it just didn't need to be there. A bunch of data that came from these old plugins that I don't have anymore, and just a few other things that just didn't need to be in my database that were just sitting there and kind of bloating it, making the database larger. And for a bit of a performance reason and cleanliness reasons, I went in to go delete all that stuff. And usually when it comes to talking about the WordPress database or thinking about going in there and cleaning it up, the first thought is, I'm gonna press the wrong button and I'm going to destroy my whole site, and that could very well happen. And that was definitely something that was on my mind when I went in to go attempt all this, to attempt to clean this out. And what I found was it actually wasn't that bad of a process, and you can do a lot of stuff with just a few very simple query lines, I suppose you could call it, which I want to walk you through. So I found a ton of success in cleaning out my own database, and in the spirit of MD 4.7, I figured I would shoot this video as a kind of an additional resource for any of you who have this same kind of performance kick that I got on, and you want to take a lot of clutter out of your database if you can find it. So with this video, I want to kind of hold your hand as we go through what exactly it takes to clean out your database without blowing your site up. And I've kind of broken it down into roughly three categories that we're going to look at here. So before we begin, you're going to want to back up your database. Of course, you can. I'm in my PHP my admin, and this is really where your site lives. This is where all your posts, your options, everything like that is stored. So if you know how to log into your web host through cPanel, go to PHP my admin and find your database. I'm not going to show you how to do all that. Then you'll be able to work. And so that's where I am right now. So, before we do anything, back up just in case you actually do mess something up. So it's always a very important step. So before we dig too much into the internals of our database here, I just want to make sure that we get to know our site as it is now. So what we're going to do is essentially clean up potentially years of clutter, months of clutter from old plugins and themes that we no longer use anymore. But to do that, we need to know what our site is all about right now and what we need to keep and make sure it does not get deleted. And you can really do that by one, checking the theme. Most likely, if you're watching this, you use Marketers Delight. If not, just make sure you know what your theme is called. And then two, check out all the plugins you have, and really take this time, if you haven't, to delete any plugins that are just absolutely not vital to your website at all. So I don't really have many plugins on here. Let's see. I have an affiliate plugin. This is me just getting to know my site. A backup plugin, easy digital downloads. There's just a ton of plugins for that. Some site map generator and Yoast SEO, and just a few other things. So I've narrowed my site down to just the plugins that I know that I'm going to need. So when I'm looking through my database, I know, okay, here's, this looks like it's related to the plugin I have now. And there's a table over here that doesn't look familiar. It doesn't match up with any of my plugins now. I can most likely get rid of it. So with that out of the way, let's go back to our database, and now we'll start messing around with some things. Let's get familiar. So again, I'm in PHP my admin. Just find the database that your WordPress install is associated with. And now let's get a few things straight about about what we're looking at here. So over here are all the tables that make up your website. This is where posts are saved, where comments are saved, and all of your options, your user information, everything that can be saved is going to be here. And we can see that the tables are broken up by prefixes. So WP underscore, that means WordPress, and then whatever the table is. So this is where all your comments live. This is where all the meta information for your comments. This is where all your options are stored. And these are posts, so all of your post entries throughout your different custom post types, post pages, whatever, and then post meta. So this table has your meta information, like post meta options, like in your little meta boxes. That's where all this stuff is stored. So and you want to pay attention to your database for prefixes, because that's going to tell you basically what the associated table or row belongs to, and that's going to be very important to understand the prefixes, because plugins and themes, they usually will prefix something with MD used to do MD underscore, so marketers delight. Now if you want to see marketers delight stuff, you just look for the keyword marketers underscore delight, so that's the prefix. In this case, for the table name, we have WP underscore, WordPress underscore, so very important to remember. So these are all our tables, and we'll look over here at the rows. So the rows is basically how many rows of data each table stores. Some of them have nothing or a little, some of them have a ton. This one almost has 200,000 rows of data. Now I have a blog, I write posts, I have some pages, 2,200, almost 200,000 entries seems like a lot of stuff. So we're basically going to be looking at the rows that have a lot of stuff, or rather we're going to be looking at the tables that have a lot of rows in them to really start cleaning things up. So I'm going to want to go into my post meta, and again, this is where all of the settings on each individual post page are stored. So let me just give you the visual. So if I'm editing any post, the screen is really small right now, and basically any of this data is stored here. So you have scripts, your checkbox options, any of these options that are in your meta boxes, that's where the post meta is. And this is really where a lot of stuff, as you can tell, probably by your own database too, is going to, this post meta table is probably going to be the largest one you have. So let's go in and see what we can potentially clean out of there. So I'm going to open it up, and I already have, so up here, it shows you how many pages of data you have, and you can adjust how many rows that you want to see at a single time. So I have it at the max 500 just because there's so much in here. So what we're going to be looking for are meta keys that we just do not need anymore. So like I said, I mentioned prefixes because this is really where the prefixes are going to help us. And again, we know which plugins we're looking for, so we can kind of match the prefixes we see with the plugins. So anything that doesn't have a prefix, like this is just kind of like, edit lock, WP, you don't want to touch. You have to assume that that's WordPress core. A good rule of thumb to follow is if you don't know what it is, don't touch it, don't remove it. It's better to be safer than sorry in this case, because you actually can cause some damage to your site if you're just removing stuff that you don't know. So only be sure to remove stuff that you know of. So all of this, I'm just going to assume it's core. So here's another one. I know that I used to use the thesis theme, and there's a thesis prefix in here, so I can probably get rid of that. There's really not a lot of these keys, so it's probably not that big of a deal. I know that I used the col for Q in one of my other sites, so this is some post meta for mine. And then I can keep scrolling down. So there's a whole bunch of col stuff, another thesis one. And I know that this feedback was from a feedback plugin that I used. So I'm starting to find that there's a good amount of keys in here that I can get rid of. So let's go to other pages and see if there's anything in here. So that's going to load up just a random page, just because I'm really doing kind of just looking around to see what we're working with here. So this was the big thing that I found in my own database. I used to use a plugin called BBPress, and that basically added a forum to WordPress. And BBPress adds a ton of stuff into your database. So I figured out that this BBP prefix actually means BBPress, and I know for sure that I don't use the plugin anymore, and I don't need that data. I definitely don't need that data, so I don't need to keep it in my database. And what I found was most of these tables are all from BBPress. So my post meta table is being absolutely flooded by this plugin that I just don't need anymore. So I definitely wanted to get rid of that. So I would recommend that you go into your post meta table, take a look around, and try to take note of as many prefixes as you can find. And anything that doesn't look like it should belong, that's probably what you want to set up to delete. So we're going to come back to why you're going to need these prefixes. So now that we kind of have an eye for why, or for what we're looking for, I found a few prefixes that I just don't need. We can start to run some SQL queries to take care of them. So I'm going to go to the SQL tab, and this is where we're going to be running some queries from. So the queries we run in here are very powerful. That you can delete a whole ton of stuff, move things around, just do all kinds of stuff from maybe just a single line. So to give you an example, an easy one, if you used a version of Marketers Delight prior to version 4.7 and you were using, some of the post meta options in the post editor, then there's a good chance that during the MD 4.7 database cleanup, that not all tables got deleted from the post meta, so that there's still old Marketers Delight data that's not going to be used by the theme anymore in your post meta table. So I came up with these queries that you can use to make sure that you delete any of the old instances of the Marketers Delight data that is left over from your post meta table. So these are them. These are the queries, and I made these based on, I knew what the options that Marketers Delight added in there were. So let me explain what this is. So we're going to delete from our post meta table. So now sometimes for security reasons, your host or some plugin, it will actually rename your WP table and use a different prefix. So if you do not have WP underscore as your prefix, then you're going to want to edit these queries and change it to your prefix. That's just a little side note. So we're going to delete from post meta. We're targeting post meta. And then again, we're going to the meta key section. That's what we were looking at before, that had all the names of the options or of the post meta. And so that's going to be like video lead or whatever it is. So basically this is a pretty cool little operator here, and it's going to mass search for any meta key that starts with a certain prefix, and it's going to compile that into a list that we can easily delete it from. So these are all the old settings formats that MD had throughout all of your posts. So it's going to mass target all of these prefixes in your post meta table. So if you want to feel more comfortable before you actually run this, you can do simulate query, and then it's going to actually pull up everything, and it'll let you know if it finds anything. So if you see a pop-up like this, then you know that your query will do something and it's valid. And we can see that there's actually still thousands of entries from the old Marketers Delight settings format in your post meta table. So with these queries, you can just simply paste it, and it's going to delete all of the old instances of those Marketers Delight settings in your post that you just don't need. So we'll click go. And now, just like that, we just deleted thousands of rows from our database table. And that's pretty cool. The reason I know that this is safe is, well, because I made Marketers Delight, so I know exactly which options you do and don't need. And also because all post meta is now stored in a single entry called with the prefix of Marketers Delight. So all of these settings are fine to delete if they still do exist. So that was just one SQL query that deleted thousands. So let's go back to see our post meta table, just the row count. Get out of there. Go back to our main database view. So when we started, that deleted quite a few thousand. I believe that when we started this post meta table was at about 178,000. Now we're down to 169. So that's pretty cool. But I also remember that BBP query. So I want to run another query that has my own custom prefix, and BBPress has a prefix like this. So this percentage means it's wildcard, basically anything before this prefix or after it. Probably, I'll keep that. So it's wildcard. So it's going to look through all my post meta keys, and anything that has this BBP, we're going to delete that. So let's simulate it, and let's see how many tables we found. So BBPress has just left 84,000 tables in my post meta table that I just don't need. I don't need them. I'm not using them. I use a form elsewhere. They don't need to be there anymore. So 84,000 rows of data in one line can be deleted. This is the cool part. This is great. It's like shedding a ton of weight. And then we can go back to the table now and see that our Postmated table is all the way down to 84,000. So I can keep going in there because I know that there are actually still a few more entries. And on my actual table, I was able to get it down to about less than 30,000 Postmated queries, or rows, I think, because there are actually a couple other big plugins that I used in the past they just left a ton of stuff on there. So that you can basically use that delete SQL query to mass delete any prefixes you find inside of that Postmated table and quickly delete a ton of stuff. So this is really, really powerful, and it's going to save you a lot of time. So I trust that if you understand what we just did in the Postmated table, that you're going to have a lot easier time understanding the next couple of things that we're going to be doing. So the other thing that I found that was making a lot of entries in my database was in my WP post table. So sometimes plugins register things called custom post types, and custom post types are just used to store different kinds of content. Well, sometimes when you disable those plugins, you don't have a use for them anymore. And because we only deleted stuff from our Postmated table, it doesn't necessarily mean that anything in our post, actually nothing in our post table changed. So maybe I can still find some BBPress stuff in here. So the easiest way to identify information in this post table is by scrolling over and looking at post type. So we can see that we have page. Okay, we know page is part of WordPress by default, and there would even be posts in here as well. I know that I don't use the gallery post type anymore, so I know that I'll be able to delete that if I want. And I bet you I can find some more post types that were related to BBPress in here as well. So I'm just going to make sure that we're looking at more rows per page. I set that to 500, and it might take a little bit to update there, but it's really crazy to see all this old stuff that your database just stores. So I have that 500 per view now, and I'll go back to the post type, and I'll just start scrolling and see all these post types that I know I don't need. There's post, there's page, I need that, but this cold themes, cold docs, this is all extremely old stuff. The feedback, it's all guides, it's all old stuff that I don't need anymore. Nav menu item, that's for our WordPress nav menu. Don't want to touch that one. A bunch of easy digital download stuff. And then here's some BBPress. I know that topic was a post type. I know forum was a post type. And there's even one called reply. So there's a good amount of rows in my post table that I also want to delete. And I found that just the easiest way to do that was, by knowing what plugins you have and knowing which post types you have in your sidebar here that you still use. And this is back in my WordPress admin. These will be your post types in most cases, that we can run queries based on that. So we'll go back to our SQL. And then we'll paste this new query. So we're going to delete from WP posts. Again, if your database uses different prefixes, make sure you change that here. Where post type, so now we're in a post type, and now we're just looking for any post types that equal a certain thing. So I'm just going to target these BBPress ones. I know one is topic, and you can even run multiple ones. So we'll do topic. I know one is reply. I know one is forum. So we'll just stick with these ones. So these are all going to delete from WP posts where the post type equals a certain thing. So we'll simulate it just to see what we're going to do. And we can see here that we found 13,000 entries in reply, 3,000 in topic, and 22 in forum. So this is all stuff I don't need, so we can delete it. This is going to be a pretty big burden off my post database as well. So we'll run that query. It's going to wait, and now we just found out that all of this stuff was just deleted from our post table. So this query was slightly different because instead of using the meta key field, we're searching by post type in our post table. So we'll go back to our database, and I think the post table was at like 29,000. Now it's down to 12,000. So I could continue optimizing that table by just searching for post types that I know I don't have anymore. So the last section that I want to go through is maybe one of the most important, is the WP options table. So unlike the post and post meta table, the WP options table is run on every single page load of your website. So the fewer options that you have to load, that WordPress has to load, the better. And I can guarantee that there's a lot of stuff in here you're probably not going to need if you have used a bunch of plugins that don't delete their data. So I'm back in my options table. I'm going to show as many rows as I can. And there's a bunch of stuff that doesn't really have a prefix, an identifiable prefix. So I'm not going to touch any of this. I'll keep scrolling. And you can also, by the way, you can assume that any option in here that has to do with Marketer's Delight, whether it's email lead, MD underscore something, you're going to want to keep that. It was just your post meta that you're going to delete stuff from. So don't delete anything from Marketer's Delight in the options table. I already did that for you for sure. And we can see there's a bunch of WP SEO. So this was actually something that I wanted to cover as well. I found out that Yoast SEO, it's a pretty popular plugin. For whatever reason, in older versions, they kept a bunch of this sitemap cache validator, all these options in here, and they're completely unnecessary. It's basically just like a cache clearing itself, I think. But I know that you don't need them. I did a little bit of research on this, so I found a query where if you do use the Yoast plugin and you see all these WP SEO site cache validators, you can see that there's a ton of them in here. There's just a ton, and they're not useful for your site whatsoever. And they should have been deleted and taken care of. So if you see all of this, then you're going to want to run a query, which I'm about to do here, and it's a little bit different. So we're going to delete from WP options, where the option name is like like, which means rejects like, I believe, WP SEO sitemap 0 through 9 cache validator, because the way that the option name is generated, it uses a random number 0 through 9. So this is the rejects part, which is where we need to like. So this is going to make sure that it only targets the SEO sitemap cache validator. So we can see that there's 213 entries of those in my particular database, so I'm definitely going to want to delete that. So we'll go ahead to do that, and now it's run. So we'll go back to our database, and WP options went down from 900 something to 752. So not bad. I'm sure I can keep going in and looking around and stuff. Let's open up, and then I'll scroll. Bunch of stuff I don't know what it's doing. I don't use WP Rocket anymore, so I might want to go grab that. So, this is a lot of stuff to look at. A lot of transients. I'm not sure 100% what those would be. So, this can be tricky. You may not get everything just because you might not know what you're looking at all the time. But let's go target that WP Rocket thing, just to give you a generic example of doing this. So I'll take the query from post meta. I'll change it to WP options, where option name, because we're not using post meta anymore, is like, I think it was WP Rocket underscore. I just know that's the plugin name that I don't use anymore. Simulate that, and we found out there's only 2 of them, but that's fine, because if you do find some that you just want to mass delete, you can use this method and copy and paste it as much as you need. So with that, I will leave you to it. Those were really the big 3 things I wanted to show you, was how to clean out your posts, options, and post meta table, because these are very important tables on your site and ones that can get the most cluttered. So I hope that this was helpful. I know it was a bit long, but I really wanted to make sure that I covered all my bases to hopefully do a good job at explaining this complex topic to you. So if you have any questions or suggestions of your own about what you could do, because I don't even understand all this stuff myself, leave a comment on this post, either on YouTube or on the Marketer's Delight website. And if you run into any trouble trouble, let me know, and I'll do my best to help you out. So, make sure you back up your database before you do any of this stuff, because it's very powerful stuff, and one little mistake, it can be pretty disastrous. So good luck. Thanks for watching, and I hope you really get a lot of benefit out of this. Again, this is Alex from the MD Labs, and I'll talk to you next time.